This is draft season presented by Moody's, a proud part of the New York Giants. I am John Schmelk, back after a couple weeks with no live shows. We did have a show, but it wasn't live. So a couple weeks of college football to catch up on. And to do that with Tony Pauline from Sportskeeda and myself is our buddy Mike Renner, who does a great job covering both the NFL and college football for CBS. Mike's midseason top 50 came out about a week ago. We'll touch on that and all the latest in college football. Mike, good to see you, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on, fellas.
No, thank you for joining us. We always love having you on every year. This time of year, then again before the draft. Tony, we have a couple weeks to kind of catch up on here. Let's start with everything that's gone on at Penn State. Obviously, new head coach. They can't win a football game all of a sudden. And the draft future of Drew Aller is now in question, whether or not he's even going to be back at Penn State next year.
I doubt he's. Well, first of all, I doubt he's back at Penn State. I mean, we talked about this after the 2000, actually right before the 2025 draft, when Allard announced that he was returning to college for another season. And I said, I think he made a good move returning to college, but I think he really needed a change of scenery. Probably should have looked into the transfer portal, going someplace else. And, this is quickly becoming, as I've said time and time again, Christian Hackenberg part two. I mean, they didn't win again. They didn't beat Iowa, but the offense showed some pep in it at Penn State's offense last week. So, I mean, right now is you got to expect that Drew Aller is going to be in the draft. Where is he going to be selected? I mean, he's not a top 100 pick. Where he's probably going to be a day 3 pick, and now you've got the injury that's factored in. It's going to be an interesting story moving towards the draft.
Mike, what kind of hits you about what's going on at Penn State? I think you had one Penn State player, the guard, in your top 50. I don't think there was another one. You can correct me if I'm wrong.
No, he's the only one. And I do love Ioane, but yeah, it's not as good a team as I think. And like I said, people were getting hyped up, but I was like, there really aren't that many top prospects on this team. And two, Aller just, the guy we saw first half of last season versus the guy we saw second half of last season. The guy we saw second half of last season was undraftable. The guy we saw first half was like intriguing. It was like, hey, if that guy gets better, he's got insane tools. He didn't get better. He got worse. He was the guy we saw the second half, and then he gets hurt. And I think his only route is petitioning for a 5th year at this point. And again, I don't think it's going to be at Penn State if he gets a 5th year. I think they're pretty much done with him at this point. But he ain't getting drafted anywhere outside of maybe like the Quinn Ewers range. Even that, it's just hard to really buy into anything you put on tape this year.
And then, Tony, over the last couple of weeks, you have a trio of quarterbacks that you want to hit on here, and then I'll kind of let you and Mike go back and forth on these 3 guys and kind of what you've seen so far this year.
Yeah, I mean, there are some guys that I think you got to start to focus on. Everyone talked about Drew Aller some had high hopes. I did not. But you got to look at, as far as I'm concerned, Taylor Green of Arkansas. I mean, where is he ultimately going to rise to? You look at the past 2 games, 19 of 32 for 256 yards and 3 touchdowns in the 3-point loss to Texas A&M. The prior week, 21 of 31 passing, 256 yards again, 2 TDs in a 3-point loss to Tennessee, both quality opponents. I mean, he doesn't have great receivers. He's got a decent offensive line. He's got all the physical skills. When you look at his size, you look at his arm strength, he's got pocket passer size, but he's got RPO quarterback mobility. I just think people are sleeping on this guy because he's not on a very good team. He doesn't have great weapons. And Green from Arkansas, Tyler Green, is a guy who I think can make some noise in the pre-draft process leading up to April's event.
Yeah, I think whether it's Shrine Bowl or Senior Bowl, he's a guy that event's going to be so big because, as you said, they're kind of overmatched. Every time you watch him on tape, Arkansas, he going against the SEC or whether it was the Notre Dame game, it's like he doesn't have receivers that these other quarterback prospects, the other top guys are working with, where it's just like, ultimately at the end of the day, you need windows. And if you don't have windows, it's going to always be difficult to look good. So he's kind of kept his head above water most games. I do think his accuracy is still an issue with me in terms of just like if we're talking about top couple rounds, but he's going to get drafted. It's just, can he sneak into higher than a day 3 pick at this point? But I think the running ability with him is unique because it's not like running ability and it's Jalen Milrow. It's running ability and he's 6'6", 235. He can really fly in the open field. That buys you a lot of leeway at the NFL level, or just any level of football nowadays. So I'm very intrigued. And the other great thing about him, the other thing I've liked is that you see technical improvement. Like you see the work that he's put in over the course of his career. Even from last year to this year at Arkansas, like it looks the fakes, the footwork, it looks more second nature to him. And so if a guy has that kind of makeup, the guy's that kind of moxie with his kind of tools, those are the guys you want to develop at the next level. So I still think there is development that needs to be had, but fan of his game. And with all these quarterbacks dropping off, right? All these other guys like getting worse seemingly, I'll buy into the guy who's like continued to get better.
One guy who I think is getting better, I think he should stay in school, but he's going to start to enter the conversation is Nico Iamaleava, now at UCLA. I mean, you had a very promising freshman year at Tennessee. You had the disastrous offseason with the whole NIL deal. He goes to UCLA. They get the crud pounded out of him the first 4 games. The coach gets fired. Then from that Penn State game, I mean, he picked that Penn State defense apart. Then he comes back against Michigan State. Not a strong team, but he has another strong game. Played relatively well against Maryland last weekend. Did have 2 picks. But again, I think maybe with Iamaleava, we may see him starting to pull the pieces together. I want to reiterate, I think it's best for him to go back for another year on the college field. But again, you look at the physical package, the size, the athleticism, the arm strength. If those technical things continue to improve and he starts playing well, I think that's another guy people are going to be talking about more as far as NFL draft prospects are concerned.
Yeah, he was a guy who in the offseason, even if last year wasn't like great at Tennessee, I put him in my top 10 quarterbacks just because it's hard to deny how insane his physical tools are. I mean, at 6'5", he is twitchy. I mean, he moves like some of the guys we're talking about as top 50 picks at wide receiver in this draft class. He has that level of athleticism to him. I think he has a good arm. And then it's like he's not inaccurate. He just downfield as a passer last year, I think he really struggled, and that gets highlighted obviously in that Tennessee offense. And obviously Tennessee does not do much to develop their quarterbacks in terms of what you want to see in the NFL. But I'm with you that there's a lot there to work with. That he, ever since, gosh, I'm blanking on the name of the OC who took over,
Neuheisel's son, right?
Yeah, ever since he took over, it's just like, oh, this is what it's supposed to look like. This is what we always thought we were going to get from Iamaleava. So, I'm not this year. I would be floored if he's in this year's draft class. And if he declared, he's probably not going highly. And there is some off-field stuff with him, too, that does have to get checked out with NFL teams. But the guy is as talented as most of the guys we're talking about here in the first round conversation right now.
And then, Tony, Ole Miss, they haven't missed a beat with Jackson Dart walking out the door, huh?
Well, it's kind of funny because 3 weeks ago when their starter got hurt and Trinidad Chambliss came in against LSU, you asked me about him. Nobody knew about him. I said, I've talked to some NFL scouts that I know, and they like this guy. They like him as a day 3 pick. He plays good against the LSU. He played really good against Georgia. He's a little bit small, but I kind of shy away from those smaller quarterbacks. They really haven't panned out well. But still, I mean, here's a guy named Trinidad Chambliss, was the backup in Mississippi before the season started. Now we're talking about him as potentially being a very late round pick, an RPO type guy, maybe a backup that you can develop. They play Oklahoma this weekend. Oklahoma's number 1 pass rushing team in the SEC. It'll be interesting, if not fun, just to see if he can continue to progress on the field from what we've seen in the past 3 weeks.
He's got an arm, Chambliss. Like he's 6 foot, listed at 6 foot, which means he's probably like 5'10". But he can really sling it. But he does have the problem that I feel like all the shorter quarterbacks, especially with big arms, have, which is he only wants to throw lasers. Like he really wants to show it off every single time he gets a chance. And I think that's where a lot of his inaccuracy comes from, is he's trying to throw like, a 15-yard dig as hard as possible when the guy's wide open. It's like, you don't always have to put the mustard on the brat, but you can see the talent. He just is going to be short, and he's going to be behind the 8 ball from just a pure how much football has he played against top competition. And obviously the Ole Miss offense, it's not the Tennessee offense in terms of developing quarterbacks, but it kind of gets a similar sort of connotation of not the best in terms of what they're asking him to do. So I've been floored, though. I mean, the guy is a gamer. The fact that he's come in, wasn't even the starter, and played as well as he has, that's going to be intriguing for a lot of people. But uphill climb when you're that height and haven't been dominant at the collegiate level to be anywhere near a top 100 pick.
Tony, a couple of the guys you've been. Go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry.
Especially when you consider how all these smaller quarterbacks that were selected, early in the first round, really have never lived up to expectations.
Yeah. Tony, you have a couple other guys you want to hit here.
Yeah, TCU, everyone talks about their offense. They had a game that took almost 5 hours to complete this weekend against Baylor because of all kinds of delays with weather. They got 2 defenders I like to keep an eye on. Caleb Elam's-Orr is a one-gap pursuit linebacker, flies all over the field, really good in space. And I like their underclassman safety, Jamal Johnson. I mean, this guy's a torpedo against the run, but he's got solid ball skills. And I think both of those guys, Caleb Elam's-Orr is a senior, was graded as basically a street free agent by scouts. I think he's a day 3 pick. And Jamel Johnson's a guy who I think could make some waves at what looks like a very weak safety position if he enters.
Yeah, so I actually haven't gotten to Johnson's tape. I need to watch Johnson, but I have watched Elam's-Orr, and I actually got asked by the Shrine Bowl scouting staff. I got asked to watch him over the weekend. I was like, invite this guy. It's like, this is a 100%. And what I saw from him on tape is a guy who is, I can't believe he got street free agent grades, because you see the twitch immediately. It's like lateral agility. You see him as a blitzer, his ability to track down quarterbacks outside the pocket. Like, he's going to test really well. And I just love how he stays square, whether it's as a tackler, whether it's taking on blocks. He doesn't get out of position. He's not like a lot of athletic linebackers. They play jumpy. They want to get downhill. They want to get ahead of blocks. You don't see that from him. He trusts his athleticism enough. He trusts who he is enough that he is very assignment sound still. So I think 100% a draft pick. Now with linebackers, you got to be something special to be a top 100 pick nowadays. You only get like 4 or 5 each year. So yeah. I don't think he's quite in that range, but this guy's going day 3 for sure.
And Tony, then a couple of wide receivers that have kind of caught your interest last couple of weeks.
Yeah, guys that people don't talk about. You talk about Indiana, it's always Elijah Surratt. But, as we saw from that Illinois game, Amari Cooper Jr. is a guy to keep an eye on. And Houston has a budding receiver in Amari Thomas, has put up some big-time numbers, has shown himself to be a good vertical receiver. I mean, 2 guys, I think, mid-day 3 type guys, just to keep an eye on moving forward.
You have Cooper in your top 50, right, Mike?
I do. I love Cooper. I think he's better than Surratt, truthfully. I think he's a better athlete. I think his game is just a little bit more projectable. Surratt's like a contested catch, outside type of wide receiver, but doesn't necessarily have the traits you want of that sort of wide receiver at the next level. I think he's going to be solid, but I think Cooper can be more than that. I think he can be like a real number 2 type of wide receiver in offense. And it's funny they put these guys together because I think they're very similar type of players here. And now I would be surprised if Thomas declares in this day and age, coming from Houston, only being a junior, because with what he's put on tape, he could go up a level, right? Like, he went from UAB to here. He could go one more level up, get a couple $1 million at this level, and then even be, if he balls out at, like an LSU or something, he'd go much higher than this, because I see a guy who is tuned up. I see a very twitchy athlete, easy mover with real size. That's the thing that I love about both Cooper and Thomas, is that they are well-built wide receivers who can run a slant, but also then get down the football field. And that's a unique combination, especially when I think a lot of receivers coming out of college nowadays are in the under 190. You see a lot more in today's day and age of like speedsters, guys who aren't your bigger bodied wide receivers. But then what works at the NFL more often than not, it's the guys who are 200 plus, right? It's the guys who have size to them, who can really then block and do other things at the next level. So both these guys have that. I'm a fan of both.
Yeah, I watched Cooper this morning. You're right. He's 200 pounds, Mike. It shows. He's willing to go over the middle. He's twitchy. He's also a vertical slot guy too. He can win over the top. So I'm with you, Cooper. Very impressive. And Tony, pass catchers you want to watch in one of the games this weekend, Houston and Arizona State, and one of those guys will be someone that we're going to talk about in Mike's top 10.
Well, yeah, Jordan Tyson, who I know is a favorite of yours. I mean, you talk about not the bigger guys, but maybe a Jordan Addison type that just is smart, is able to separate through his routes, catches everything that's thrown to him. Also a tough guy. I mean, he takes a pounding, pulls himself off the field, gets back in the huddle. One guy I would keep an eye on from Houston, we talked about Amari Thomas, Tanner Koziel, a transfer from Ball State, starting to turn it on. A real good pass catcher. Last year at Ball State, 94 receptions for 839 yards. This year, 36 receptions, 350 yards. I don't want to classify him as a move tight end, but he is a terrific pass-catching tight end who does a solid job the few times they ask him to block. I think Koziel, when you get in, it's not a good tight end crop. You never know what's going to happen. I have him right now as a mid-day 3 pick, but he goes through the draft process. Maybe he plays well at the Shrine or Senior Bowl, has some good testing numbers at the Combine or a Pro Day workout. I mean, he's a guy who I think could jump up draft boards.
Mike, it's fun. Go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
I would say Koziel is interesting because I think the way you see teams moving towards a lot of 12, 13 personnel, they're either like coveting a backup tight end who's a super good inline blocker, or someone like Koziel who's a super good receiver who you can use him in space as a blocker. If he doesn't have to be your Y, he can go block a linebacker, right? He can go block a corner or safety at the second level.
Seattle uses Arroyo like that, right?
Yes. Yeah. Like it's kind of like an either or. You get teams doing a little bit of both. So I think that second tight end position, you're just going to see coveted a little bit more around the NFL nowadays.
I'm with you, Mike, and I think that's a good time to transition now over to your top 50. You can find it on CBS, but before we do that, draft season is presented by Moody's, a proud partner of the New York Giants. Decode risk, unlock opportunity. Learn more at moodys.com. And Mike, let's start with Jordan Tyson here. I'm a big fan of his too. He's probably my wide receiver number 1, though I do think that could change by the end of the year. But you see him at number 4 on your list. And I would not put him in like the Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors type of category. And then I see Jermon McCoy, a guy who's number 7 on your list. He's coming off an injury, barely hasn't played this year. Does that speak to how jumbled and kind of unsettled this top 10 really is in this year's draft class?
Yes. I think there's really only 2 guys who I would call top 5 picks in this class. And, like top 5 grade picks. There's Ruben Bain, Miami, and Peter Woods, Clemson. It's like after that, there's not a surefire blue chip stud sort of prospect in my eyes. But Tyson, you just know he's going to be good. How good is he going to be? I'm not so certain, but with the premium that is the wide receiver position, when you see how much they get paid relative to everyone else, it's like, even if he ends up wide receiver number 20 in the NFL, that guy gets paid over $30 million a year. And that guy is super valuable to your football team. So I'd take that guy still when it comes to either him or like, some of the other top guys are like a tackle who might be a guard and Spencer Fano. It's like, no, just give me the valuable position who I know has a really high floor. So that's why I put Jordan Tyson there. Even if like Caleb Downs, who's behind him, he's an awesome player. Highest safety in the NFL makes like what the 35th wide receiver makes in the NFL. So it's just like a value proposition there at the top of the draft.
You titled your top 50 an intriguing class. I'm going to be a little bit more, I'm going to throw shade on it. I think it's an uninspired class. Now, John and I are here in New York, and the Jets are 0-7. And if you listen to talk radio, everybody's like, well, the Jets are going to get the first pick of the draft. And I'm thinking to myself, this is not a year when you want the first pick of the draft because, it's not like last year. We'll talk about Ruben Bain in a second, but with Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter and Cam Ward, it's nothing like 2024 with the 3 quarterbacks at the top and the 2 dominant receivers. I just think that,
And Joe Alt, by the way, that year.
I'm sorry?
I said, and you had Joe Alt that year, too, a tackle.
Exactly. Yeah, there you go. And I just think that, if there's a year that you don't want to have a very early pick, and it looks like the New York Jets are going to have a very early pick, this isn't the year. Ruben Bain is your number one player. He's the number one player on a lot of boards. Where would you compare Ruben Bain or grade him, say, compared to Abdul Carter from a year ago?
Good question.
It's tough because distinctly different type of players.
Right.
I felt better about Carter though. But that was like final grade. We'll see where Bain ends up. But I do feel really good about Bain. And I do actually think in today's NFL, with a lot of people using these like 3-4-5 techs to just like spike and create havoc as like stunters, he's tailor-made for something like that. I mean, that guy can just create havoc on just like a bull rush rep or something of that nature where he just has to go straight ahead. But yeah, Carter was a special prospect. I had a really high grade on Abdul Carter, so I'm probably going to end up with a higher grade on Carter.
It's Mike. It's funny when you talk about the edge prospects, and I think some of the smaller, twitchier guys like Bailey at Texas Tech are kind of emerging here, right? But I think this is a much different type of edge class. It's got a lot of Bill Belichick edges, is what I call them. Yes. Guys that are 270, 275, that are just going to kind of crush the pocket on you, win with power. They can play 5 tech. They can even move into 3 tech on passing downs. This is a much different type of bigger bodied, almost true 4-3 defensive ends than we've seen, I think, in recent years.
Oh, 100%. And that's also why it's maybe not that exciting of a class, because that's not really where the NFL is going. And, most of those guys, they almost have to play inside. I look at, I think I just talked about this the other day on the pod about Zach Harrison for the Falcons, who was a defensive end coming out of Ohio State. Like that's where he played, did never kick inside, but he's 6'6", 270. That guy in the NFL now is a defensive tackle. And that's where Zach Harrison's ended up in year 3 here. Like that, and he's making plays there. That's what you have to be, because you have to play in space so much at defensive end, but also you need guys who can create havoc on the interior. So I think a lot of these guys, whether it's like Keldrick Falk from Auburn, even Ruben Bain, they may end up in the NFL as defensive tackle. So if you want a true edge rusher, there's really not that many in this class, unfortunately.
But there are a lot of bigger defensive ends. I mean, if you need that sort of player, the 2026 draft is going to, you can find one literally through the first couple of rounds. Obviously, the talk is always about quarterbacks. You alluded to it earlier, and I agree with you. The guys that everyone expected to rise to the top have not, and I'm not including Arch Manning in that group, because as John will tell you, we never had Arch Manning rated that high. We just wanted to see him play. You got Fernando Mendoza of Indiana as your number 3 player. I would agree he's the top quarterback in this year's draft. I like his development. I thought, when you saw him at California, you saw a lot of good physical traits. You saw the arm strength. You saw the athleticism, the ability to run with the ball, but there was a lot of inconsistency. Now he's starting to pull it together at Indiana, and he's getting better. I don't think he's been a Cam Ward a la 2024, where Cam Ward basically put that Miami offense on his shoulders and carried that team through the season. But we're seeing some improvement from Fernando Mendoza. My question is, and I know this is just speculation, do you think Mendoza enters the draft? Because I think under Cignetti, the development that he has shown, and as John will tell you, I'm a Kurt Cignetti fan. I think he's the best coach in football, pro or college. I think another year of that, will really catapult him and really improve and polish his game. It would be a little bit easier now with the NIL money. He probably could get an NIL deal of $5 to $6 million. Granted, it's not going to match what he would get if he was a top 10 or top first round pick from the NFL. But from your point of view, just your opinion, do you think Mendoza's NFL ready right now, or do you think he'd be better off going back to college for one more year?
I'm always pro stay in college as long as you can until like you really have mastered it, until you're really just the game's easy for you. And then that's what you saw from like Jaden Daniels, right? Is that 5 years, by his 5th year, it looked all second nature. And then he hits the NFL ready. Like that's your best bet because your first contract ain't the real deal, right? That's not what you're playing for. Even if money's your big goal, especially a quarterback, it's a second contract. So like it all pales into what develops you the best for that second deal. So I'm with you. Now, The one thing is they're going to lose Omar Cooper and Elijah Stroud after this year. You will not have, unless they really hit the portal hard for receivers, but you won't have two NFL receivers at Indiana. The guys coming to tow are not going to be as good. So he could be better, but his stats could look worse because he doesn't have those guys. So it really is just going to come down to where's the NFL seeing him? If everyone else falls off, if he's really the last man standing and the desperation wins out and he's going to be going number 1 overall or number 2 overall, it's just going to be hard to tell a guy not to make the leap if that's already where he stands in the NFL eyes.
Yeah, but I would agree with you, especially getting that second contract, another year on the college field. And you talked about Jaden Daniels. I mean, Cam Ward, you remember his story. He was in the 2024 draft, signed the NIL deal with Miami, and look what happened with him. Just a couple other guys in your top 50. And these are my questions. Dante Moore's number 8, played 5 games in 2024, started none. Ty Simpson, number 37, played 6 games in 2024, started none. Trevor Goolsby, the offensive lineman who's having a real good year at Texas. He's number 23 on your list. Started 2 games in 2024. I believe, ironically, you can correct me if I'm wrong, for Cameron Williams when Williams, or actually Banks was also hurt.
Yeah.
But my question is this. Does that minimal body of work concern you? Does it factor into your rankings at all?
100%. I mean, you don't want one-year wonder guys. Like ideally, you want a guy who has played a bunch of football. Now, with them, you want a good excuse for why they didn't play. And if you're sitting behind, a guy who was a top 100 pick quarterback, yeah, you get it. If you're sitting behind 2 offensive tackles that were both draft picks at Texas, it's like, okay, we can get why he didn't play. But you still do want to see them play more football. And ideally, they'll come back to school and get that opportunity to play more and solidify their draft stock even more. But when I'm stacking my board, and especially in this year's class, I put so many of these guys in because I'm just like, they're the best. There's no one else worthy of taking their spots. When I did my mock draft this week, putting guys at the back end of this first round, I'm like, I'm really going to put him. This is who I have to go with. It just wasn't good by that point. So that's why I'm throwing them in there, is because it's not like they're taking the spots of guys who are surefire studs, especially like Gooseby in this tackle class. The tackle class kind of deteriorated. There's not a lot of these guys look that good anymore. So yeah, I'll get the guy who at least looks good through 5 games, even if that's the first 5 games of his career. At least he's playing good football. The other guys aren't playing good football. So that was kind of the thought process in my eyes, is that ideally I wouldn't, but it's just this year you kind of have to.
Mike, it's funny you bring that up because I think heading into this year, we thought the offensive tackle group might be one of the better ones. And Tony and I talked about that heading in. And some of the guys aren't playing well. Other guys, you're like, oh, no, not a tackle. You're a guard.
A lot of guards, yeah.
And that's really and even I think the top tackle on your board, Maui Goa from Miami, you look at him, he looks like a guard. Like if you just look at his body type, he looks like a guard too. So you're right. This clash just isn't what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think I said on CBS Sports Network the other day, I'm like, what I thought was going to be a good tackle class turned into a great guard class. Because all these guys, whether it's Fano, whether it's Proctor, maybe even Maui Noah, depending on who wants them, it's like, I think a lot of them are best off at guard. Not even best off. I wouldn't play them at tackle. Like a lot of times I'm willing to give guys the benefit of the doubt. But I think with Proctor and Fano specifically, I'm just like, they are guards at this point. And there'll be good guards in the NFL, scheme specific maybe for both of them. But I'm kind of, a lot of these guys turned into better guard prospects than they did tackle prospects, which is, fine for certain teams. But if you're in need of a tackle, I just think you're going to be a little out of luck here.
2 guys I was overjoyed to see in your top 50. Chris Bell, the receiver from Louisville, number 34. I had him as a 3rd-round pick coming into the season. He's a Week 5 riser for me at Sportskeeda after that terrific comeback win by Louisville over Pittsburgh. If you were watching the Miami game Friday night, you saw what he did. 9 catches, 136 yards, 2 TDs. I mean, he's a bigger guy, but he's also quick. He's got a terrific short burst, and he catches the ball extremely well.
Yeah, I was hesitant to buy in based off his tape last year because I still love to see skill. Like I still love to see the route running chops first. And so athletes, a lot of the busts in recent years of the position are the guys who were athletes that you're like, oh, we can develop them, whether it's Quentin Johnson, who's maybe the biggest success story in that regard, or like a Traylon Burks, or maybe a Xavier Leggett's, like more often than not, it's hard to develop these guys at the NFL level. But with Chris Bell, you saw the development now. So once I did, I'm like, okay, this guy's got the goods, because at 6'1", 220 with probably 4.3 speed, I mean, at least low 4.4s, that's a tough ask for corners when you really have size advantage. And again, it goes back to our conversation about size mattering. 185-pound wide receiver versus a 220-pound wide receiver running 4.3s is a different animal. And he's not just straight line fast. He has agility as well, which is, I think, where the other bigger bodied speedsters like that I mentioned, that they really lacked, and that really showed up when they had to get pressed at the NFL level. I think Bell's going to be able to. So he's definitely rising. And even from since I did this board, he's even impressed more since in that Miami game.
Before you get to your second guy, Tony, really quick, I want to follow up on the wide receiver class, just because we touched on a bunch of them. Brazel is a guy that I watched this morning for the first time, Mike. And it's funny. Obviously, Giant fans have some PTSD from the Jalen Hyatt experience coming out of the Tennessee system. So I didn't know what I was going to see when I tuned in. And for a guy that's 6'5", I think he's actually got pretty quick hips, and he can flip them, and he can change directions pretty well. And for a guy that's just 200 pounds at 6'5", he's actually a pretty strong guy at the catch point, which is one thing that Jalen Hyatt has struggled at in the NFL. So do you think in this class, I think you have 7 in your top 50, is he the guy with the best shot and the traits to be a true number one in the NFL? And maybe some of the other guys are maybe more of a complementary role?
No, I still think the guys I have at the top, so Tyson and Tate, just because, true number one is kind of, true number one's more often out of the guys that just run full route trees. Like
that's fair point.
Those guys can run full route trees, and so those are the guys getting featured the most, getting the most targets, catches. But he's kind of your old prototypical X. He feels like, to me, I was talking about him earlier today, he feels like a 1990s or early 2000s kind of wide receiver. We used to see these guys a lot more.
Haywood Jeffries action, you think? A little bit of that from the Oilers back in the day?
Yeah, he's just got that
Herman Moore
speedster. Yeah, we used to see these guys a lot. They've kind of gone away a little. Maybe they've gone to the basketball court, because this is kind of who he is. He's like that swing small forward who just can slash and get down the football field, go up over the top of corners consistently. I mean, you see it weekly on his tape seemingly. And like you said, he has more of that stop-start ability to shake at the line of scrimmage than your most 6'5" wide receivers don't work out, because they can't move like that. They can't move like a 6-foot wide receiver in short spaces. And so corners just get their hands on him at the NFL level. But I think you see enough from Brazel to know that that might not be an issue. So I'm really excited about his game and the jump he's made. And I think he looks stronger. He used to be super skinny at Tulane on tape. Now he's still skinny, but at least a lot stronger than he was then.
The other guy that nobody mentions, and I'm a big fan of his, Genesis Smith. Great first name for those of you who remember the prog rock band from the 70s and the 80s, Genesis. I have to throw that in there. I had him as a 5th-round pick coming into the season, but he's just improved. He was a week 3 riser for me at Sportskeeda. I mean, good run defender, good range, displays solid ball skills. I think he's got 7 or 8 pass breakups this season. Wouldn't be afraid to play him over the slot receiver. And this is a guy that nobody talks about. I was glad to see you have him as a top 50 pick, or a top 50 prospect, I should say. Yeah,
and young too. I mean, he's only a 3rd-year guy, and that's seemingly becoming uncommon nowadays. Back a decade ago, that was not that was all you were drafting, but it's more uncommon nowadays. And just fluid. I want safeties that are all around athletes. I don't need high-end one trait. I need your worst trait to be as good as possible. And I think when I watch Smith as an athlete, he doesn't have his worst trait is still very good. He's just a very solid all-around athlete. And those are the guys you want roaming the back end. And so I agree with you. I think he's versatile. I think he can cover the slot if you want. I think he can play deep if you want. And I think he has the size to play in the box and tackle too. So just a very well-rounded player in a safety class that doesn't have a ton of that after Caleb Downs.
Mike, you mentioned in order to be a top 50 pick, it off-ball linebacker these days, you got to be a pretty special player. You, I believe, have 5 off-ball linebackers in your top 50. Tony also loves this inside linebacker class. So I want to ask you just generally about this inside linebacker class. Who are the guys you like, why you like them, and then I'll let you and Tony kind of go back and forth because he also loves this group.
Yeah, I mean, the Ohio State duo, everyone loves the Ohio State duo, but Arvell Reese, Sonny Styles, two like different types, even like the same size, two just like distinctly different types of linebackers where Styles is more of your rangy cover second level guy. Reese is your blitzer edge hybrid sort, and both are first rounders for me, or likely to end up there in this class. I know you got to be special, like I said, to be top 50, but maybe not necessarily this year. And also, when you are that high end athlete, those are the guys that go top 50, right? I think Sonny Styles could run in the 4.3s. He truly is uniquely explosive at second level. And then Reese is just, teams could just see him as an edge rusher. It wouldn't surprise me if teams just like, why would I waste playing this guy off the ball, asking him to drop in coverage when he can just win one-on-one against offensive tackles the way he does, kind of like the Mike Parsons transition. When you're that good, just like play him at the more valuable position. And then after those two, I really love Jake Golday from Cincinnati. What he's been this year, he's a former on-ball guy, former edge rusher, I believe Central Arkansas before transferring. And it's rangy, 6'4", 240, kind of like, I'm going to be saying that a lot in this class. They're all huge and athletic. And that's, again, like those are the guys that go highly. And so there's a lot of them in this class. And you see him, whether it's as a blitzer or in coverage, like he can just fly and plays very aggressively. CJ Allen from Georgia is like the one guy who's not in that mold, but he's also like the biggest ass kicker in this class. He reminds me of, so when I watched him last year at Georgia, and when they'd have him and Jalen Walker next to each other, it was almost like he was Jalen Walker's little brother because they're built so similarly. He's just a touch smaller though, frame-wise, but like similar wide shoulder build. And they just play the exact same way. So just think of Jalen Walker, but as an off-ball linebacker, that's who CJ Allen is. And I think the last one that made it was Anthony Hill from Texas, who's just a graceful second level athlete at nearly 240 pounds. And I think he's gotten a lot better this year. He was starting since true freshman year at Texas. I thought he got a lot better this year around the line of scrimmage in terms of reading and reacting. Wasn't really much of a playmaker last year, but I think is becoming more so one.
You know, you talk about ass kickers. One guy that didn't make your top 50 list I was a little bit surprised at was Harold Perkins Jr. for LSU, especially the way he's returned, from the injury that kept him out most of last season. What was the reason for that?
Yeah, one, worried about the ACL, and two, I still feel like he's still learning linebacker off ball a little bit, but the athlete is insane. And so compared to these other guys, I feel just a little bit better about them if I had to plug and play them in the NFL right now. But I have been impressed. I was not super impressed prior to, but he has worked his way up. So I was just starting from a way lower point on him this season is probably why.
Yeah, Mike, I want to ask you about the number 50 guy on your list. Hollywood Smothers, the running back out of NC State. After I made sure he was, in fact, a real person and you did not make him up, I watched him this morning. He's a lot of fun. He's a smaller running back. He's under 200 pounds. He's not going to, run through tackles a bit, but he can cut on a dime. He can run away from people. He's got pretty good vision. He's the number 2 running back after Jeremiah Love, who I will get to in a little bit. Fun little player.
Yeah, it's a weak class of running backs, in my opinion. After Jeremiah Love, you're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. But he is just tuned up. I mean, you see an athlete, and now he is on the smaller side, and that's going to hurt him. But I think these are the type of backs that I want. I want you saw last night with Jahmyr Gibbs, and he's definitely not Jahmyr Gibbs. I'm not putting him in that category, but you want the guys that can create on their own because you're getting so much more space in the modern NFL running games than ever before. Not to say that, guys like Cam Scadaboo aren't valuable. They are valuable, especially when you're that good at what he does. But there is a lot of guys who can bang between the tackles, who can grind out tough yardage, not to the degree Scadaboo can. Again, I loved him coming out, so I'm kind of making an exception there. But there aren't a lot of guys who are like 4.3 high end, make you miss in space sort of guys. And so that's where I'm trending towards at the position, not in just in the way the NFL is playing nowadays. And I think Smothers is that guy. You see him when he gets some space, he is going to hit a lot of home runs.
Tony, you have two other guys that you want to ask about not being on the list, right?
Yeah, we talked at this top about how disappointing the quarterback class has turned out to be. I was a big fan of Lenora Sellers coming into the season, a real big fan of his, but his game has kind of leveled off, if not regressed. Was it you don't have him in your top 50? Was it more so because there were 50 other better players, or were you not just that high on him coming into the season?
With him, I mean, he's so much like the Anthony Richardson conversation where I was just like, I don't know if I don't know. I don't want to be the team that drafts him where he's going to get drafted. And Sellers is probably one of the 50 most talented players in this class. Like leaving him off was more just saying, I don't want him to come out of school just yet. I want him to take as long as possible in college. And now, like from all the reports this offseason, it seems like he has a good support system. Maybe some people telling him the right things in his ear, because he's not ready. If he gets thrown into the NFL and he doesn't go to the right spot and they're asking him to play right away and it doesn't look good and he gets benched, like it could go really south for him. And he's still super young. I think he's still 20 years old. Like, take your time. But I'm with you. Like he just hasn't done enough from last year to this year to get me like able to say that the inconsistencies, the things that he struggles with on tape, that they'll for sure get better, that he will do enough to clean them up. And the thing that really actually I think worries me the most is just, I think his throwing motion to me is just a little clunky. For the inaccuracy that he has, I will trust guys who have a cleaner motion than he does to fix them. I worry about that motion ever getting to the level of consistency from an accuracy perspective that I want to see it.
One last guy, like the quarterback class, as we mentioned, the offensive tackle class has not lived up to expectations. Xavier Chaplin of Auburn was a guy that a lot of people had as a potential top half of round one guy.
Oh, so did Tony. Tony loves him. Tony loves him.
I love this game at Virginia Tech. I mean, you watch him this year; he's basically been a human yellow flag. I don't know if you feel that he's a human penalty maker. My question about Xavier Chaplin is: before the problems this year, where did you have him rated coming into the season?
I think he was 21st on my board, and he was another one where it's like you watch him physically, and you're just like, this guy could be top 5 OT in the NFL. That's what we're dealing with from a size, and he's so well put together. I heard, though, I don't know if you heard, that he has hearing problems, and that's why he's been such and like obviously lost his confidence at some point this season. But like you said, he's 8 penalties this year, and the tape's been just awful. But the athlete and the guy, like, because the good Lord only made so many guys his size, and usually tackle and scouting's, I don't want to say easy, but like it's easier than other positions because the traits needed are so rare, one, and stand out so obviously too. But and he has them, but the tape's been, gosh, I mean, hard to even draft him in the top 100 at this point. But yeah, he was top 25 on my board coming in.
I haven't heard about him with hearing problems, but when you go from the ACC to the SEC, you better make sure you have top hearing when you're on the field in some of those opposing stadiums.
Yeah, I think I've heard that he is hearing problems, and that's what's been such an issue for him.
Interesting. Mike, you mentioned the good Lord, so I will give you a chance to talk about Notre Dame. Jeremiah Love, you mentioned him earlier. He's 16 on your board, by far the best running back in the class. Tony's been a little frustrated by some of his inconsistency over the last couple of years, but man, against USC, he was a one-man wrecking crew. And by the way, I also really like your freshman quarterback in Notre Dame, too. I think he's going to be really good. But tell me, what kind of running back, if NFL fans want to get a feel for what Jeremiah Love is going to look like? And look, he could be a top 15 in this class, maybe even a top 10 pick in the National Football League if a team really wants a playmaker. What type of archetype running back will Jeremiah Love to you be in the NFL?
Yeah, I mean, he is kind of similar to Jahmyr Gibbs. That's not to say he's going to be as good as Jahmyr Gibbs. Gibbs is insanely good. You never know when a guy, and I do agree with the inconsistency and sort of his running styles. It's unique. It's not like everyone else's. He can get away with stuff because he is so gifted, but he bounces around a lot behind the line of scrimmage. He's not a pure one cut, follow the blocking sort of guy. But that being said, he's so dynamic. I mean, just a level of dynamism that people can only dream too. He's probably going to run the 4.3. He's just an all-around unique special athlete, incredible feet, like his ability to, and you saw in the USC game, like get in and out of holes. And I think you've seen a willingness in recent weeks to really attack more and just say, I'm going to attack this closing gap and I'm going to get through it. And, going to go through an arm tackle. Maybe it may not be the cleanest, but you got to hit it. And that's kind of the one thing that's been missing. And if that's the guy you're getting just a elite talent at the NFL level, in my opinion.
All right, Mike, final question. I just saw your most recent mock draft went up, I think 3 hours ago as of this recording on CBS. You have Fernando Mendoza, just for you, Tony, number 1 to the New York Football Jets. When did it start becoming hard for you? When you got into the mock draft and you're like, oh my God, I'm out of players. What do I do now?
Gosh, I think it was about pick 20, which is crazy.
Okay. Wow, that's early. That's very early.
But who was I putting? I remember when I put Amari Washington at 19, and I was like, ideally, I'm not drafting Amari Washington in the first round based off of what I've seen so far, the Oregon defensive tackle. But here we are. Mekhi Lemon, I put to the Seahawks just because I'm like, that's good. But then after that, I'm like, Caleb Lomu hasn't played like a first rounder this year, the Utah tackle. Caden Proctor really hasn't either, but you can bet on the talent. But there's just not guys that I'm saying in an ideal world are first rounders at this point, unfortunately. So it was tough. There's some guys in there where I'm like, he's for sure not going to be a first rounder, but I want to put him in there just to give him some love. But it's not a great class on paper as of right now. I hope we see some guys play some better ball the second half of the year.
Do you have a pet cat? Go ahead, Tony. I'm sorry.
Let me ask him. You said you would usually not put Amari Washington in the first round. Would you usually put Fernando Mendoza as the first pick of the draft?
No, that either. I don't think, I think ideally he's the guy you're throwing in at like 12. Yep. How in mock drafts, there's like a team that desperately needs a quarterback. And so you give him one and he's probably kind of like an afterthought, but it's midseason and you want to give some love to, or give some like stuff for them to be excited about. But I do still like him. I just don't think his ceiling is anything unique, right? I think he's more of a Jared Goff-ish-esque prospect, or like in that kind of range of prospects.
JJ McCarthy-ish type of thing?
Yeah, I think he's more polished than McCarthy. Yeah. Okay. But like, where it's just, if he becomes a top 5 quarterback, I would be absolutely floored. If he becomes a top 10 quarterback in the NFL, I'd probably still be pretty surprised. Like, I just feel like he's probably capping out. I think he could start, but I think he's probably capping out in like the teens. You're just like, that's the level of tools we're dealing with. And that's why I think a lot of people are hoping Dante Moore plays a lot better down the second half of the season.
And let me just say this about Mendoza. I like him, but you've seen what great coaching can do for him. And, if he gets within an organization that just has no history of being able to develop quarterbacks, that's my concern with Mendoza, why I think he should probably go back another year at Indiana.
So you're saying just avoid the Jets?
You said that, but yeah, I mean, that's where I was heading. Remember, we're in New York.
Okay, yeah. I'll say it. Avoid the Jets. Yeah.
Final one, Mike. Have you developed like a pet cat in this little class, like a guy that maybe other teams don't love, but you're like, I just like putting on, I'm in a bad mood. I want to feel better about myself today. I'm going to put this tape on and just have a little bit of fun.
Oh, that's a great question. I really like watching, I think the linebackers. Jake Golday is probably the one who like I'm way higher on than maybe I got him 22nd on my draft board. So he's the one where I've watched probably a bunch of his games now, and I don't really care too much about UC football, even though I live in Cincinnati. But he's one where I'm just like, that guy's going to work. Like that works. Like what the athlete, the way he plays, it's going to work out. So Jake Golday might be the one where I'd say, just I'll watch his tape weekly because it's that good, and I think he's a very exciting player at a school that's at a position in school that probably doesn't get a lot of attention, that you wouldn't guess a UC linebacker as a top 32 potential pick.
Mike, tell us about. Go ahead, Mike.
Let me give Mike my guy.
Let's hear it.
He's not his top 50, just to get his opinions on him. That guy for me would be Ian Strong of Rutgers.
Okay. I've watched him, very good possession-y wide receiver. I mean, lives up to the name. What about him makes you bullish?
In my opinion, he's a dominant game controlling receiver with an inconsistent quarterback, and he's done it for 2 years. I mean, people watching this year, he was also really good last year. Made a lot of catches. I've seen a lot of development in his game, and yeah, he's not a precise route runner. He's not a guy that's going to get separation. He's more of an Elijah Surratt type of receiver, which is going to have its limitations. But the size, the ability to win out for the contested catch, just great focus and concentration, and the ability to do it. I mean, the opponents know the ball is going to get thrown to him. The ball gets thrown to him, and he consistently comes away with the catch. I always put a premium on that.
And he's more prototypical of what I mentioned about Surratt. He has the wingspan. He has the frame that you can bully NFL corners when you're that big and that long.
All right, Mike, tell us about the podcast, everything you do at CBS, anything you want to promote. The floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, you can find me on Pushing the Pile podcast, or you can we do mock draft Mondays, I think 3 p.m. every Monday. We'll run through, it's not always my mock draft, but like I go and talk about someone else's mock draft on CBS Sports Network. So you can check it out there if you want to hear my thoughts on prospects.
It is never too early to get mock drafts.
Yeah.
I believe that is the CBSSports.com motto, if I'm not mistaken. You can never have enough
do too many.
drafts.
It was also our motto for a while. I think we've cut back on the sheer volume, but
yeah,
we're still pumping out maybe one a week here.
No, absolutely. And it's always fun trying to get ready for the draft early. Mike, good stuff, man. Really appreciate the time. Always good to catch up, and we'll catch up closer to the draft.
For sure, fellas. Thanks for having me.
That's draft season, brought to you by Moody's, a proud part of the New York Giants, uniting the brightest minds to turn today's risk into tomorrow's opportunities. Learn more at Moody's.com. For Tony Pauline, check out his work at Sportskeeda.com, his risers and fallers, all that stuff. For Mike Renner, I'm John Schmelk. We'll see you next time, everybody.